Random Shark. Kavos is perhaps one of the most disliked people in the commentary community for a myriad of reasons. For one thing, his first real encounter with them came at a time when he was dishing out criticisms of them left, right, and center.
Right lads, I'm Chubbs. I'm a massive fucking pussy, a loser in real life, and I have a massive inflated ego.
For another, he hasn't exactly been rock steady in his convictions.
He made 2 whole videos on the baited drama, suckling the teat of the fucking drama, milking it for everything he wants, you know.
And to top it all off, he does seem to have quite an ego about his product.
All these bitches waiting to make Rice videos after iDubbbz. Guess who was doing it before that?
But even though there are certainly many criticisms to be made of Kavos, most of which I'd agree with to an extent, seeing as most of the community has already taken him to task, let's say a few times, I figured I'd talk about what I think actually does make Kavos different from the rest of the community, and why I think he's been able to carve out this place in the community despite the vigorous disapproval of the majority of other commentators. Starting first with his connections, or perhaps more accurately, his lack thereof. You see, a lot of the commentary community has been formed by connections. Pyrocynical likes your content and agrees with it. Here's a gold star and a shout out. I'm Alex, would like to get you on a podcast. Here's a glowing opportunity. For the most part, at least since Leafy's collapse, commentary has been made up of Pyrocynical, people he's associated with, and the associates of his associates in a sort of feedback loop. Basically, from my understanding, you make a video, Pyrocynical or one of his associates agrees and enjoys that video, they would apparently invite you to some circle jerk group chat where they all come up with the same opinions on the same topics, and we get what was essentially the commentary community in early to mid 2017. And even though the group chat and the sort of hegemony that it created has been reportedly disbanded,
there was a big group chat with everyone just talking all the time, just being friends, right? But that's gone. It was a Skype group chat. It actually still exists, but it's so unbelievably dead.
But I bring this up to give context to the initial split of Kavos and this particular sect of the commentary community. And along that line, when he went against them in a series of videos,
I could honestly see his face being next to the definition of Hmong in the dictionary.
As an overarching group, they weren't very happy about it.
A lot of commentary channels have made videos on this fella. You know, he's not really liked in the community.
And in my opinion, the reason they seemed to collectively take offense to these attacks was because they were so collectivized from having so much interaction with each other. However, even though Kavos didn't have someone like Pyrocynical at his side, he did make nice with another person in the community, that of course being Keemstar.
I'm your temporary host Kavos here, filling in for Keem on today's show. It's an absolute honor to be here.
An interesting connection with a backstory that I won't go into here, but this again puts him at odds with the majority of the commentary community who, for the most part, seem to see Keemstar as YouTube's biggest villain. So in making that connection, solidifies the two sides of conflict. On the one side, Keemstar and Kavos, and on the other, Pyrocynical and his associates. And obviously this doesn't take others in the community into account, but specifically Kavos and the others that he's typically compared to, like I'm Alex or Wild Spartans.
So was that the ultimate goal, though, was to just show him that he was no different than you or any of the other
everyone else?
So
yeah, it was more like it's not even just that.
So that's the outset before we even get into his content. But before we get into that, let's first address whether or not Kavos is Keemstar's puppet, as seems to be a fairly common assertion. And to me, that is actually a valid question. There are certainly correlations between the narrative that Keemstar wants to push in certain scenarios and the direction in which Kavos will push that argument. For example, with Kavos' recent Philip DeFranco video, there was certainly a narrative that Keemstar wanted to push of Philip DeFranco being a scammer because Keemstar sees DeFranco as his competition. Did Keemstar give Kavos the instruction to make that video, and on bended knee, Kavos agree with a fervent, "Yes, milady"? I doubt it. It was probably a case of Keemstar and him discussing the situation, perhaps even Keemstar suggesting that he should take that direction, and Kavos deciding there was enough to go on for that video. Or the H3H3 controversy where Keemstar was trying to pin H3 to the cross for his behavior in the PewDiePie N-word situation. While again they both came to similar conclusions, it wasn't as if Kavos and Keemstar were the only two people who had the belief that H3 had fucked up. In the end, on that point, in my opinion, it's a toss-up. Kavos has certainly gone against Keemstar's opinion in the past, as with Kavos' issue with Rice Gum, but I think it's a case of Keemstar suggesting directions for Kavos to take, and Kavos agreeing with those positions enough to make a video rather than him just swearing total loyalty.
My videos are my own. Keem has never once told me to do a video, nor will he tell me to do a video.
I told Kavos way back in the day that he should make a video on you. Kavos, he didn't want to make a video on you. He said that you were too small.
Now onto Kavos' content, and this one is relatively tricky because when you boil everything down, there are very few differences between Kavos and I'm Alex or Wild Spartans, especially when looking at their channels currently. Kavos uses Facecam with average edits, I'm Alex uses Facecam with average edits, Kavos covers trending topics almost exclusively these days, Wild Spartans covers trending topics almost exclusively. And as he's made the argument before that he puts time, effort, and research into his videos,
in my opinion, what makes me different is that I put time, effort, and research into my videos.
you can argue that that is indeed the difference, and in some of his videos it's true enough. His recent video, Do Not Forgive Logan Paul, discusses things beyond Logan's apology, which would have obviously taken him time to look into. But other videos like Logan Paul just ended his career, the video is just a reaction to his vlog, so you can't retain that as a consistency in his content, nor does it contain anything beyond the common opinion of denigrating Logan as a prick that he is for making that video. So the major difference then has to come from Kavos' approach.
Have you ever heard of a joke, you boring cunt?
And as has been pointed out time and again, Kavos' approach to discussing people and issues is much more adversarial than the other large commentators.
Yeah, you should never have posted that video. And the reason, I'm gonna tell you to shove this whole apology right up your ass.
And while it's often labeled as a reason to despise Kavos, I see it as the one major differential in terms of content that Kavos has from the larger community. From my viewpoint, commentary has kind of been neutered since the fall of Leafy, fallen even further into the abyss as YouTube's been cracking down on what they deem to be edgy content, and people like Wild Spartans or Brad Does Banter have taken to the Paul method of inserting noises over naughty words.
And Viner, or ex-Viner, should say that got tanked.
Spit it out. You are a hamster.
Or just excluding them altogether in their videos. On top of that, you also have people like I'm Alex saying that being hypercritical of people burns too many bridges in their opinion.
I don't want to make enemies, really, with everybody anymore.
And while I certainly understand the thought process behind these decisions, the end result is a more passive community. And in this time of commentators taking more lenient views on people and giving them passes while cracking jokes, it's actually nice to have someone say, no, fuck that, fuck Jake Paul, he's not just some idiot, he's a cunt and you shouldn't support him.
I'm not even surprised anymore about the Paul's actions on YouTube anymore. They give no shits about anyone. They are easily some of the scummiest fucks on this website.
And oftentimes, that's the approach that Kavos takes. And while it may be a persona, it may be an exaggeration, or whatever it is, that's an aspect that's slowly been dying in favor of a more lighthearted approach, and in my opinion, that's the hole that Kavos is helping to fill. Anyways, that's the video, guys. Like it, don't like it, let me know. And just to clear this up, because I know a lot of people will undoubtedly ask me, no, I don't know Kavos. I've never spoken to him. He shouted me out, I assume because of this video I made where I took a more favorable stance on him than the rest of the community, and I appreciate him for that. Personally, I don't watch Kavos that much, probably because I don't care what Jake Paul has gotten himself into this week, and I think the quality of his videos has waned of late as a result of him seemingly taking a more view-centric stance a la Keemstar as time's gone on. Videos of his like the one he did on Ruby Rube or Lance Stewart had jokes and skits in them, but recently every video of his that I watch is just the covering of some trending topic. It's not what I personally look for in a video, but what can I say? 15 million people can't be wrong, can they? Oh. Wait a minute. Also, before anyone tries to defend him milking trending topics in favor of a comment taking his narrative.
But at the same time, I know I'm gonna get like people going, you're milking it, milking Logan Paul. Like, I'm not trying to milk it. If I think there's something of value for a video, I will make it. And I do think there is value here for the video.
If he didn't rush out the video to catch the views on the Logan Paul situation, he could have caught all these points beforehand. But he did rush it out, so it's a non-point to claim that he's not milking it when all of this research could have been gathered in the past. Not that I personally would even have a complaint for it, other than the fact that it's just evasion for criticisms that you take on this point, just like self-deprecation. Like, obviously you're milking it. Just own it instead of trying to weasel around on this one, and that's why you felt the need to point out so many times that you weren't milking it.
This will probably be my last video on Logan Paul for a while, unless he does anything different. I'm not trying to milk the situation.
And if you can listen to all of the criticisms of Kavos and take none of them as legitimate, then you're just as blind as the stans who die on the cross for Jake Paul that Kavos is always making fun of. Ultimately, though, I think Kavos is an interesting character, if not just because of his conflict with people like I'm Alex. I think a lot of their conflict, at least recently, comes down to the way they view their channels. And in that same vein, I think my next video in this series will be on Wild Spartans because I think I understand his philosophy on this site, and even if I don't agree with it, I think it could be an interesting topic. But that video will be a ways down the line. Shark pride for life, bruh.